Good morning, everyone. It is the 14th of August, 2020. We have a couple jobs to do today. The first one is repairing a curb, not a curb by the road, but a curb under the ladies' chain link fence. We're going to be in Bristol Borough, Pennsylvania, and in fact, we're only a minute away from the job at this point. So we're going to show you how to not only repair the curb, but to refresh it and make it look brand new. I'm going to do that right after this. Okay, so we're coming up to the house right here. It's this beige house on the right hand side, and you see this grayish painted curb in front of it that has cracks and stuff in it that we need to fix. First thing we're going to do is use the grinder right on there and clean off all the paint as best you can all along there. And then we've got big grooves in here and a crack here. We're also going to seal across the whole length of it. Alright, so this is stucco tape, and what we're doing is we're putting this on here because this way if anything drips while we're working, it won't drip onto the existing sidewalk. Alright, so what I got here is I have some Cementol in a little bucket, and I have a paint stirrer. I'm just going to add a little bit of water to this. The more water you add, the soupier it's going to be and the longer it's going to take to harden. So if you mix it so that it's more like a Play-Doh, it'll harden even faster than if you mix it where it's soupy. Now for what we're doing here, I'm going to mix it so it's a little bit on the soupy side, more like a mayonnaise type of consistency. And by the time I get to the second patch area, it should have had enough time to harden up a little bit to be more like a Play-Doh. So I'm using this paint stirrer, and I'm going to mix this real good. And the time that you're using to mix this is also counting against you as far as setup time goes. So you want to get used to this stuff before you try to time it. It takes a little bit of a learning curve to understand how long you pretty much have with it. But see, it's like a mayonnaise. It's a little bit on the soupy side. But that's okay because we're going to fill the crack first. I'll slide the cardboard down here and we'll fill this crack. And all I'm going to do is reach in with my latex glove and I'm going to pack it into the crack that's on the curb, in the curb. And we'll do the front of it as well, making sure that the entire crack is packed solid. I have no idea what my camera person is doing. The frame is sideways and then it's right side up. I feel like I'm on some sort of a amusement ride here. That's alright. This is my daughter that's recording. She started working with me and she's not used to the whole camera scene yet. She will get better with time. She's getting better with all of the jobs that we do. The camera is part of her position that she don't have much experience in. So I'm going to use a sponge here. It's damp. It's not dripping wet. It was dripping wet. We wrung it out until it's damp. And we go over the patch until it blends in perfectly with the curb around it. You don't want any high spots. Okay, so here's a big crack, and our Cementol is now like a putty. It's hardened up just enough. Now, I forgot to wet this first. It's always a good idea to wet the area that you're going to patch. And I was making sure that Kitana was using the camera okay, and that it was recording, and trying to get the Cementol in before it hardened up too much and it wasn't pliable anymore, so I forgot to wet it. But you just take your sprayer, just lightly spray it. It don't have to be dripping wet, but it should be wet because concrete sticks better to wet surfaces. So just pack it in there, using your fingers, smooth it out to the best of your ability, making sure that the entire area is packed solid. And then you're going to do the same thing you did over at the crack, and you're going to take a sponge, soak it, wring it out real well. You want a clean sponge, and you're just going to feather it in using the sponge. There was a very tiny separation around the bottom of this fence post. You could barely see it, but it was there. And in the wintertime, like I said, if water gets in there and freezes, it's going to start pushing. And we don't want that. So it looks better, packed with a little bit of Cementol and feathered with the sponge, but it also protects it during the colder winter months. All right, back to the crack. back in crack. So we're using a sponge that's a little bit wetter this time, and we're rubbing it a little harder, trying to form it nicely to what's around it. Now I'm going to show you in a little bit, stay tuned in the video here, we're going to show you how to make this patch match the rest of the curb so it doesn't look like a patch. Alright, now that the front of this is hardened up a little bit, it was starting to roll out on me before, so I had to do this in 2 stages. But now that it's hardened up there in the front where my hand is now, we can pack more in on the top. I want to make that curb on the left that's higher slowly grade down to the curb on the right. You're still going to notice it, but I don't want it to be so noticeable that it looks like a larger curb and a smaller curb. Alright, so we'll feather this all in. There are a few areas you'll see that have divots in them, and I'll just take a little bit of Cementol with my latex gloves and I'll fill those holes and go back over it again with the sponge, trying to feather it in better. Also, take notice that this stucco tape has really saved me here. If this staining was to get onto the concrete sidewalk and it wasn't cleaned up immediately, even if you tried to brush it off or power wash it off, you're going to see an area that looks super clean and new versus something that doesn't. So it'll look like blotchy little messes on it. Always try to protect your workspace. So I'm going to continue smoothing this with my hand. I'm actually looking at it from the top down, kind of like the camera view is showing you now. This way there's no bump out in the curb. I want it to look like a straight plane along the front side of it. The top of it is tapering down because we've already discussed this, but the curb on the left is a little bit higher than the curb on the right. And that's because that break happened and then frost probably moved the two independent of one another. So look down from the top view, make sure the front of it is all nice and smooth, and feather it in with your sponge. I'm going to get more water out of here, but I got to show you the pressure this thing has. That's it. It's like a fire hose, man. This thing's probably like 80 to 100 psi. It's unbelievable. That's dangerous, man. If a pipe like that ever bursts in the wall, you realize the mess you'd have in your house in like minutes. Alright, so there's Kitana sweeping the tape line, getting the last bit of Cementol crumbs off the ground. There's a spot right there on the patch that's still dark gray. That is not cured yet. That is still wet. In a matter of 5 or 10 minutes, though, it will be just the same color as everything around it. Now notice the white area is where our repair has taken place. The rest of the curb looks old and dingy. Now you might think, well, I could just pressure wash the rest of it, but you're never going to get the two to match perfectly by doing that. So stay tuned. I'm going to show you how to make that entire curb look brand new. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, all you people at home, is this Cementol? Is it? Is it? No, it's not. This here is just plain old Portland cement. This is the main ingredient in Cementol, in mortar, in concrete. Portland cement is what makes it possible. And I'm going to explain to you how people make cement and why it works. But first, I want to tell you, you're not going to mix this to a thick consistency. You're going to mix this to more like a paint. You can even stick your hands in it and mix it like this. It's not going to hurt you at all. It might discolor you a little bit, but it's not going to hurt you. Now, Portland cement will dry out your fingers a little bit. You might have to moisturize afterwards if you don't rinse it right off like I'm doing in the bucket. But you mix it into a cement and you're just going to use a regular paintbrush. And you're going to paint the entire curb, old and new, the patch included, with this Portland cement paint mixture. If you paint the entire curb with this Portland cement, it will all be the same color when it dries. So even though we didn't repair this part of the curb, we are going to paint it. Now it's important to understand that this is a patch, and any patch that you do for yourself, for a customer, for whatever, you should always tell them it's probably only going to last a year or two. Patches are just that, they're patches. If you want this curb to be perfect for many, many, many years, you really got to bust it out of there and put a new one in. Pour a new one that goes down under the ground a little bit to a nice gravel bed so that water can disperse from underneath of it. But who wants to pay that kind of money for a little curb underneath their fence, right? So what we're doing here is we're taking Portland cement and we are mixing it into a paint, and we are painting the entire curb. Don't worry if you get it on your grass. Grass is going to grow, it's going to get weed whacked off, it's going to disappear. But you want to paint the entire thing, front and back, all sides that are visible. Now let me tell you where cement comes from. Alright, so you got to admit, the people that came before us, and I mean way before us, they were very intelligent, because they figured out that if you took limestone and you crushed it up into a powder, and then you heated that to, I think, 3,500 degrees, that limestone would release hydrogen. The hydrogen that was in the limestone. Well, when you add water to that powder, seeing water is 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen, you're adding the hydrogen back in, and it takes its normal form again. It turns back into stone. And that is what makes concrete work. It's limestone crushed up and then heated till the hydrogen is released from it. And then it sits in a bag waiting for you to put hydrogen back into it. And you do so by adding water. So that's pretty cool, right? It's a great trivia question. It's a great thing to talk about with the guys when you're sitting at a bar or sitting around a fire or whatever. And not many people realize how the concrete works. Now, the other thing I want to tell you is Portland cement is in just about every concrete product. Like mortar is Portland cement with sand. That's all it is. If you take Portland cement, add a little bit of lime to it, and add some sand to it, you got S mortar. If you take Portland cement and you mix it with sand and rocks, you have concrete. Cementol is just Portland cement with some type of additive that allows it to have a chemical reaction and cure faster. Portland cement is in every cement product. So here we are. We mixed it with the water. We didn't mix it with anything else, and we mixed it with a lot of water, and that turned it into a paint. And as you can see, I'm painting this curb going right along until the whole thing looks like I poured a brand new concrete curb. It's all going to be the same color. Now, it won't stay this dark color. As it dries, it will turn lighter like new concrete does. But you'll get to see what that looks like. Well, I'm not going to wait till the whole thing dries, but you'll get to see what a majority of it looks like. Is that fair? Alright, so this here is just concrete caulking. I don't really care for this stuff, but this woman specifically asked me to do this. The reason I don't like it is because it's a very light gray. Anyway, you put it on just like you would caulking, and then you use your finger and smear it in. When this hardens, it prevents water from getting down between the curb and the sidewalk. Now, if the sidewalk was installed properly, the sidewalk would be pitched away from the curb, so there shouldn't be a whole lot of water going into it, but it's a good idea to seal it. I would have preferred to use clear silicone over this stuff, but again, you got to do what the customer wants. I don't like the looks of it. It looks like this really bright line between the two, and I like things that kind of flow together. But that's what this stuff is. I'm applying it here along the base of the curb, and as you can see, the whole curb matches. The curb looks very, very good. And when it dries, it's going to dry looking like a brand new curb. It's literally going to have all the same color and appear as if I poured a whole new curb. And this whole job probably took about an hour, maybe a little bit longer, trying to, you know, move the camera at different angles and take the time to make sure that you were being able to see what was going on. But you see the space between the two? This is why she wanted this caulking in here. It protects her curb and her sidewalk and safeguards against cracking in the wintertime from water getting down in there, and like I said, turning into ice, freezing, and then pushing the two apart. So we're going to finish this up, and I'll show you what it looks like. Are you ready to see this? This is a job well done. This took about an hour, give or take. Look at that curb. Don't that look absolutely wonderful? It's all a uniform color. All the cracks are gone. All the splits are gone. There's a few dark areas. That's where the Portland paint hasn't dried yet. But it looks fantastic. The customer called me later on in this day and told me how happy she was with it, and already has booked additional work that she wants done at her house. So thanks for watching. If you like videos like this, go ahead and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up. Hit that like button. It really helps the channel out. I hope you have a fantastic day. I'll see you next time.